Hi everyone, it's me, Darlene. I am here today with a sewing project for you guys. This is going to be another way to do a Quilt As You Go project. So one way that I've showed you already how to do a Quilt As You Go is the rag quilt. Now with a rag quilt, you can go ahead and make something gigantic because you never are forced to put the entire quilt under the arm of your sewing machine. All the sewing is done to the left of your machine. So it's a very convenient way to do large quilts. The way I'm showing you today, there are some who make large quilts, and I even made one. I will show it to you at the end of this video, but it's cumbersome because you do indeed still have to put large parts of that quilt under the arm. So I say it's good for smaller projects. So here's a few things you have to know before we go over to the sewing table. Whatever size blocks you want to end up with, meaning your finished block size, that is the size that you are going to cut your top pieces for the sandwich. We are going to be doing a top piece, a batting piece, and then a back piece. The top piece can be any kind of square you want. It can be denim, flannel, cotton. It can be a crazy quilt block that you've made. I will try to link down below on how to make a crazy quilt block and also how to do the rag quilting. This is a good way to practice doing some smaller crazy quilt blocks and putting them together, and that can be fantastic. And that is what I did for the quilt that I made. I had so much fun doing all the little crazy quilt blocks. It was just a really cool way to make a crazy quilt by doing this Quilt As You Go method. In the center, you can use batting, you can use flannel, you can use fleece. You don't even really need to have anything in the center. For today, for this demonstration, I will be using batting as my centerpiece. The batting needs to be cut the same size as your top layer. So I want a finished block of 8 inches. So my top is going to be cut 8 inches square. My batting is going to be cut 8 inches square. For your backing, you are going to add 2 inches to whatever size the front is. So mine is 8 inches square for the top. My backing is going to be 10 inches square. One thing to note is the backing is going to act as sashing between your panels, meaning the backing is going to be folded over onto the top of your square. So you want to make sure that the backing matches the top, or at least looks good, you know what I mean, for whatever you want for your design. You will see as we go. I am going to be doing a 2x2 block for you. That will show you how to put 2 blocks together, and it will show you how to put 2 rows together. My plan is to make 2 panels and turn this into a tote bag, and then that tote will end up on eBay. I think that's all I wanted to tell you at the beginning. And the backing, I'm going to be using all the same print, but you certainly don't have to. The backing can be different colors also. Just remember that it will come over to the front, so if you use different color backing, you will see different color sashing. But I think you will like this project. It's very doable to make a child-size quilt with this. Even if you have just a regular sewing machine, it doesn't get that bad. If you ever want to try to quilt something big, you just roll it and you put the rolled part under the arm of your sewing machine. I'd love to say I'll give you a tutorial on that, but I like easy. Let's stick to easy. So what I'm going to show you today is easy. So let's just go over to the machine and get started. I have decided on 2 different prints for the top of my sandwich. I am going to be using this funky print here that is all blues, a little bit of gold, and then a blue and white gingham. My backing, which is also going to act as frames around my blocks, otherwise known as sashing, to connect blocks, is just going to be this plain blue. Almost has a denim look, but it's very, very lightweight cotton. I will start with my top pieces. I want 8 blocks, and they are going to be 8 inches square. So I'm going to just press some fabric, cut my blocks, and then I'll be back. I cut my 8 top squares. I have 4 of the gingham and 4 of this print, 8 total. These are 8 inches by 8 inches. I also have 8 batting pieces that I cut to match the size of the top piece. So these are also 8 inches by 8 inches. When I trim my batting pieces, I save all this stuff because that makes excellent filling for little stuffed animals. And I will be showing you how to do some stuffed toys soon. So hang on to your scraps. 8 top pieces, 8 batting pieces. Now I need 8 backing pieces. And these are going to be cut 2 inches bigger than my top. So I started with 8. These need to be 10-inch square. So I'm going to cut 8 pieces 10 by 10 out of this. The first thing we're going to do is start connecting some backing pieces. I know that sounds weird, starting with the back, but that's what we do. We're actually going to do 1 row at a time. Now my row is only going to consist of 2 squares because I wanted to keep this project small. But if you have, say you're making a child's quilt or something, you want to go 4 across, you would just put your pieces all out, as many as you need in your row. I'm going with 2. If your fabric has a right side and a wrong side, you want to put them right sides together. Let me show you with a print. Let's just say for a minute that these would be my pieces that we were using for the backing. Obviously there's a right side and a wrong side. You would put your right sides together like this. So the wrong sides are on the outside. And you're going to stitch a 1-inch seam allowance on just one edge. So I'm going to do that with my 2 pieces like this. I don't have a right side and a wrong side to this, so it doesn't matter. But I'm going to take you over to the machine. I am going to put 2 of these babies together, and I'm just going to sew down one side, a 1-inch seam allowance. Okay, I have my 2 pieces here put together. Remember, if you have a right side and a wrong side, you want to make sure your right sides are touching. You want your right sides together. If you don't know or don't have a line for where a 1-inch seam allowance is, just take a measuring tape and put your foot down. So like my needle would be like right there. And then 1 inch out is, for me, I don't have a line, but I know it's just shy of the actual plate. So I'm just going to eye it, just keep my fabric about, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch in from the plate. But you certainly can put a piece of tape there so you know where your 1-inch allowance is. Now, I am going to take a couple stitches and then I will back stitch to secure it. And I will do the same on the other end. Do I care about thread color? Yes, I do. I gotta take the green thread out. Hang on. So excited that I found the perfect blue. I'm trying to use all threads and stuff that I have on hand before I buy anything new. So I'm always excited when I get the right color. Okay, I have to spin a couple bobbins and then I will be right back. I think I'm ready to rumble now. 1-inch seam allowance. Take a few stitches. Back up a little. Forward. There. So you can see when I open this up that we have a seam here. A big one, 1 inch. If you want, you can go press that open. If you were making a project where you were doing 4 blocks across, you would connect 4 blocks in this exact same manner. Okay, I'm going to go press that and I'll see you back at the table. We are ready now to start building our sandwiches. You're going to take a batting piece. You're going to lift up that seam that you just pushed, that you just ironed down, and you're going to place your batting there, and you're going to place one of your top pieces there. Likey that. And then we're going to go over to the machine. Actually, this is a good thing to pin. I'm not big on pinning, but I'm just going to put 1 pin here in the center. When we go over to the machine, and I'll show you closer there, I don't pin this, but you certainly can. You could even, if you wanted to, before you make your sandwich, you could go to your iron, fold this in half and down. You know, that's a good idea. How about I go do that? Hang on. That is definitely worth the extra step, so let's make sure we do that. So here's what I did. I had this 1-inch seam allowance that was open and pressed down. I went to my iron and I just went in this direction to my iron. I took this top seam allowance and I folded it under and I pressed it. Now I'm going to do the same on this side. I am going to fold it under just so that it like almost touches the seam, and it's going to be pressed down. So hopefully you can see that I have tucked in the raw edges on both sides, tucked them in and pressed down. Now let's go back to making our sandwich. You're going to take your batting and your top piece and you are going to put it right up against there. And you can see that when we sew this part down, it's going to go over the top of your piece. That's what's going to create the sashing look. It's going to frame that piece. So again, I'm just going to put a pin in the center, hold this whole little sandwich together. If you want to put some pins along here, you can. I prefer to be as pinless as possible. You're just going to do that all across your row. So my row, I want to alternate blocks. So I'm going to take a batting and I'm going to take a gingham. No right or wrong on that either. Put those two babies together. I'm going to lift my little flap here. Put that up as close as I can. And try to leave an inch on the top and bottom. Make it even with the other square that I have. And then I will be stitching down to secure that. So let me just put a pin here in the center. And I'll take you over to the machine where it'll be easier to see what I'm doing. So let's see if I can show you a little bit better here. I have my two blocks and I am going to put the sashing over and stitch. And I like to stitch pretty close to the folded edge there so it's nice and neat all the way down. And then I will do the same on this side, just stitch all the way down. As long as the raw edges of your sandwich are under there, you are good. And you can start right from the top. I'm actually going to take my pin out that's holding the blocks because I like to be able to make adjustments. I totally have the wrong needle in my machine. And I have the wrong glasses on too. And I'm not really letting you see what I'm doing. In other words, I'm a lousy tutor. Okay, I'm going to go over to the other side. But first I'm going to go get the right glasses. And I'm going to remember to turn my camera back on. Do you know that some of these pins were my grandmother's? I remember these pins from childhood. And I still use them. I really liked pressing this down before coming to the machine. I made an entire quilt without doing any of that pressing. This is much easier. Sometimes the extra step is worth it. Sometimes. Okay, so you can see what we have here. Look at how beautiful. It's completely finished. And all you see on the back are some nice stitched lines. Very, very nice. Like I said, if you were making a bunch of these, you would have a whole row of just the squares across if you were making a quilt. Now, I'm going to do my other row like this, and then I will show you how to put the rows together. I have my 2 rows complete. Now, I wanted to tell you, if you want to do any quilting, now is the time to do it. Once you have a row put together, you can go back to your machine and do an X, or do a square in the center, do a heart shape, free motion quilting, anything you want. You just have just one row to deal with under your machine and you can just quilt each block if you want. I'm not going to do that during this tutorial just for the sake of time. So now I'm going to show you how to put 2 rows together. So here's one row and I'm going to alternate. So here's my other row. See how that works? We are going to pick up these 2 rows like a rag quilt. And we are going to go and stitch right here about an inch. Let me show you that again. So I want to make sure you get that part. You're going to put your 2 rows together. You're going to grab these 2 rows in the center and lift so the backs touch. And then we're going to go to the machine and do a 1-inch seam allowance all across. If your fabric gets in the way, you just push it aside. So I have my backings together. I don't care about the top layers. I'm going to push those out of the way. I just want to do an inch allowance all the way down on one side. Now I'm going to move all this out of the way. Now when we open this up, we will be able to do the same thing. We're going to take our seam allowance and fold it over and then press it down to enclose all these squares. Let me show you over here. We're just opening it up. You can go over to the iron and press this open. We're going to fold it over just like we did before, and we're going to stitch down. We're going to do that on this side, and then we're going to do this on this side. And if you had a bunch of rows, you would just add each row on that way. I pressed this open, but I didn't fold the edge down and press it. I'm just going to stitch and just do that by hand as I go. Thought it was a good step, but I'm not big into extra steps. And don't worry about things being straight or perfect. There is no such thing. If you do it with just a certain little kink in the fabric or an extra little curve that shouldn't be there, well, then you're the champion of doing it exactly that way. So be proud of that. This would be much easier for me if I had a smaller sewing needle. I've got this big, gigantic, like for denim. I don't know where to look for sewing needles, so I think I'll just have to buy some. Turn it around. I'm going to do the other side. Now I can go press this if I want. We have one last step. Let's pretend this is your entire quilt and that you're done. We are just going to go around the entire quilt and fold about 1/2 inch and then fold over onto our quilt piece and stitch. And we're just going to do that all the way around. Once again, I am opting to not iron. I'm just folding as I go. What we're doing is like creating the binding. Just going to fold over my raw edge a little bit and fold up over onto my square. I like to do the two sides first, and then I'll do the top and bottom. I highly suggest that you don't do the pressing at this point, because it's hard to press this when there's batting in the way and all that. Don't be afraid to do things just by hand as you go. I'm stuck. Got a big bump to go over. Get down, dum-dum. Get. Okay. If you ever find that one of your pieces of the sandwich is too big, you can always trim it before you do this finishing step. Okay, top and bottom. You can do whatever kind of corner you want. If you want to like trim it or tuck it in, or let me see what I'm going to do. I don't know. Let's cut a little piece of that off. Just going to do a double fold. One more side. So this is what we end up with. You can see it makes a nice piece. I still have threads to trim. I will take care of that. And if you were to make this really big, you would end up with a beautiful quilt. But I'm telling you, it can be a lot of work putting the rows together. So I would stick to a small project for this method. If you want an easy quilt to make that never has to all be put under the machine, then you want to do a rag quilt. But then you have all that time it takes to do the snipping. You know, a rag quilt could be just ragged by not snipping. You could just wash it and just let the raw edges do its own thing. Maybe I'll have to experiment with that. So I have to make another one like this, and then I need to make the tote bag. This is not a tote bag tutorial, so let me just tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make 2 panels exactly like this. I'm going to cut these threads while I see them. I am just going to put them back to back, and then I'm going to sew around 3 edges. Then I'm going to make just some little short handles. I'm not going to do a whole shoulder strap. Don't know exactly how I'm going to do that right now, but I will be doing it, and it will be on eBay in another couple days. But I do want to show you the quilts that I made. Hang on. This is my quilt that I am so proud of. I put a lot of time and effort into this. I made 48 blocks. Each block was a crazy quilt block, and that in itself takes a lot of time. I put no effort into the planning. I just grabbed scraps and went wild. That's the way I like to do it. So you can see there's a big variety. I don't have a place to show you the whole entire quilt, but you can see it's very colorful. Look, that's my shirt that I'm wearing right now. See? Try to show you some more pieces. And I backed it with this solid leopard. So they're all framed with the leopard. And you can see that that's how it comes out when you have all your pieces put together. Now for my panels, you know how you start with a square and then you sew your crazy quilt pieces down onto that foundation? I used this ugly fabric that I don't know why I ever bought it. It's got a wool blend feel to it. I washed and dried it. Make sure it shrunk as much as it could. So I sewed my crazy quilt pieces onto that. It was a good way to use up that fabric. And since I did that, I did not bother with any batting. It's just a nice heavyweight blanket. And I absolutely love it. It is 6 across by 8 long. So I made 48 blocks. These were 8-inch blocks also. So I just wanted to show you guys, in case you enjoy making crazy quilt blocks and you really don't have anything to do with them, you can even do small projects. You could do a tote like I'm making, like this. That's all that this quilt is a whole lot of that. I hope you enjoyed. I'm going to say bye at this point, and I will be back with more soon, and you can look for this tote on eBay in a few days. Please remember that if you're watching this in the year 2020, that auction has now ended. Thanks so much. Bye!